2012, I started teaching at True North Health Center, and then with the in 2020, when all the classes went online, I moved out of California. And so I continued teaching online, but I also took a break for some time for my own personal reasons and journey and everything, spending time with family and traveling. And so I'm just getting back into teaching on a consistent basis at True North. So anyone that's there at True North joining us, amazing. If you are in your room and have access to Zoom in the chat, or if you're on a device in the dining room, let us know that you're at True North. If you're doing a water fast, anyone that's not familiar with True North, it's a water fasting center, medically supervised water fasting center, where they also facilitate juice fasting and just clean eating, which is not just by any means. I've made my career of it because it is so powerful in helping people heal. And so True North was where I got started and learned so much more than I learned in my master's program of nutrition, through actually working with the patients and seeing people get well and healthy. So if you haven't been to True North yet, I highly recommend taking a visit. It'll take some planning, but it's absolutely worth it. And if there's a fasting center that's closer to you, by all means, check that place out. All of the fasting centers I know, the owners, founders, trained with Dr. Goldhammer at True North Health Center, and they're all good colleagues. So you'd be in good hands. All right, amazing. Nice to see you guys are from all over. I am in Mexico myself. I recently moved to Mexico, and the weather is very hot right now. It's a rainy season, so lots of humidity and heat. But it's beautiful down here, as it is in most of the world, everywhere, right? Life is beautiful. So I am going to get started with sharing my screen. And I saw a couple people down the road from True North, but I don't know that I saw anyone at True North. But usually they're in the dining room watching and not on a Zoom. And so I miss you all. I miss you at True North and being there with you in person. Hopefully I'll get to visit someday soon. So, okay. I'm going to share a little bit of my story in here too. Slideshow. Let me know if you put this in the comments too, how long you've been a part of my community in the culinary gym, not my community, but the culinary gym and my work, I should say. If you have, that'd be awesome to see. Okay. Yay. Flavor that heals. Oh, Sunshine. I love the name. It's your first class. Exciting. So thank you for being here. Thank you so much. We got some new people. Awesome, Carol. Okay. And I love the longtime kind of community of fans, members. We've done a lot of different things with recipes and cooking classes and a physical in-person studio in California. That was amazing. Susan, I just love being with you guys in person. So I cannot wait to have a center of my own someday and have you visit and be in person with potlucks and classes and everything. So we're talking about flavor today because it doesn't get talked about, first of all. And so I feel very called to fill this niche, as they would say in kind of the business world. But beyond that, the reason I feel called to fill that is because it is so powerful. It is so powerful. And I've had my own journey of healing, and it wasn't until initially there was healing, and then there was a long phase where I kind of got static and even backtracked. And then it was flavor, seeing flavor in a different way that pulled me through. So let me explain a little bit more. When I was little, my whole intention for myself and for others was to help people shine. I just noticed, I actually felt like my light was dim, was suppressed, and I did that on my own for various reasons. There's no blaming, but it was part of my soul's journey to go through that suppression of my energy and my light. And in that, at that phase, I recognized, this is at like maybe 10, 11, 12 years old, I recognized that I wanted to shine. I wanted to just be radiant. I felt like it was inside me, and that was my mission. So I got into health and went into pre-med. Going that route wasn't until I learned about the healing properties of food that I became a nutritionist. But it was always this reason of wanting people to feel their best. And when you're not just in a healthy state physiologically, but you're also emotionally, mentally, and spiritually healthy, that's when you really shine. And so in the last couple of years, I've done a hard look at what my work is in this world, what my mission is, how I'm serving. And I realized it's so much more than just the food. And at the same time, in that process, the last few years, recognizing that, and if you've been on my email list and seeing my road trip and my journey to Mexico and all these things, you've heard a lot about this, these different pieces beyond the food. But at the same time, it was the food that allowed me to go deeper into the mental and emotional work, and eventually spiritual. It was the freedom that food gave me to feel into the other aspects of myself. And so I am coming back to go deeper with the food and help people really grasp it. And my kind of the hardship that I went through in, it was like 18 years old, was not being overweight. It was not a chronic disease that I knew of at the time. I did have chronic diseases, but they weren't plaguing me. And it was really just food addiction. And I was on these highs and lows. And with the food addiction, there was a lot of self-image issues, shame around my body and not loving myself. And so through this process, I realized how important it is for flavor to be in the spotlight sometimes, initially, especially when you're transitioning to a plant-based diet, because it makes it sustainable. And so early on, the very first year that I was teaching whole food plant-based at True North Health Center, that's where I taught 2012, I was teaching there, and at Dr. McDougall's. I wanted the food to be so delicious because I knew that's what would help people sustain a plant-based diet, but also how to get them there to begin with. If it didn't taste good, then it wouldn't be something worth doing. No matter how much the doctor said that you should be doing this and that you would have these certain results, if it didn't taste good, you weren't going to continue with it long enough to get those results, right? And then if you did get the results, it needed to stay tasting good. And so my journey was about making it initially was about making the food really delicious. And I excelled at that. I became known in the whole food, plant-based, specifically sos-free, sugar, oil, salt-free world of recipes and cooking. I was known for the most flavor. And I was proud of that. And I enjoyed my food tremendously. I loved it. And over time, I realized there's a couple things that are really important to understand to maximize not just flavor, but to maximize our health and happiness, whether it's with a plant-based diet or a whole food diet. Healthy eating in general depends on flavor for it to bring us health and happiness. And by talking about nutrition, focused on nutrition or calories, macronutrients, micronutrients, any of those things, the phytonutrients, it's all fantastic. But if you don't also address flavor, then for some people, it might not be an issue, but I argue differently for multiple reasons. So that's what I'm going to go through here with you today. I'm going to show you 3 secrets that I learned over my journey. And these make the difference for me now in what I'm doing. So I'm going to tell you the secrets and then we'll talk about them more so. Okay. God, Susan, chocolate cake, that was amazing. I have those pictures I see often. So the whole food plant-based diet, that's a great example, can be so delicious. But that flavor, in order to get our health and happiness right in the long term, the flavor needs to be right. Okay, and this is going to vary depending on the people, but let's talk more about this. Okay, so secret number 1 is the flavor we enjoy is directly related, linked to our well-being, right? So if we're enjoying flavor like this, we're going to have certain outcomes, not just health outcomes, not just physical outcomes related to like our weight, inflammation, but also in our mind and our emotions. And that's going to carry over to the rest of our life, our relationships, our work, our general energy throughout the day, our happiness. And that all carries over to our spiritual essence and embodiment and even connection. So we are whole beings. And when we're eating flavor like this, highly processed junk versus flavor like this, that's nature's glory, like nature's food intended for us. We are also nature. We are in this ecosystem with nature. We were all made by the same creator, whatever that might be, your higher power, source, quantum field, right? It doesn't matter what you believe in. We were made from the same creator. And just like everything else in this ecosystem, it was designed to work together so beautifully, right? The soil, the plants, the trees, the water, everything just flows really well together. And so this is what our bodies are designed for, this type of flavor. And obviously there's not a plate with a very specific dish here. This is just fresh plants from the garden. But this is what I mean, the fresh whole plant flavor. Oh, and we don't even need to get near specific to plants right now. Just the natural flavors. That's what our bodies are designed for. I'm not going to get into, obviously I am plant-based and we're speaking to a plant-based community, but the argument is not even about animal versus plants. In this case, our bodies are designed for natural food. And that includes animal products. I shouldn't say includes fresh animals. And I don't want to get into a debate about our design specifically to consume animals, but by and large, we do have that ability. And our bodies can handle it. What it can't handle is the synthetic. So let's look at taste specifically, because this is the initiation between our food and our health. It's like the very first connection. You could also say the smell and sight of the food as well, but your sensing of the food, the flavor that you're experiencing. This is the first link of flavor and taste to our health. Okay, so this is one little taste bud in the tongue, and when you have the little microvilli at the top, they're going to sense the different taste molecules, the different stimuli in the food, and send a signal to the brain through the nervous system, right? So we're sending whatever signal that comes from the microvilli, whether it's you're tasting sucrose, glucose, sodium molecule, it might be umami, it might be glutamate, whatever it is, it's going to send that message to the brain. And so that message is really powerful. And we choose the food that we're eating based on the flavor that our mind desires. Even when we're considering nutrition, all of that is playing a factor into what our mind desires. And the flavor that we are going to enjoy is based on all of those things, the nutrition, but also what are the more typical thought of flavor is, which, is like the sweet, the salty, sour, bitter. Those are actually taste. And flavor, it does incorporate our hunger levels, our satiety, our health, our cultural experiences, our beliefs. So much goes into flavor. It's basically our whole experience of food. And so our mind is determining the flavor. And that's what our taste buds are going to enjoy, is whatever the mind is deciding we're going to be having, but not realizing that the flavor we consume influences not just our taste buds and then our brain, and creating like the dopamine, serotonin, whatever you are under the awareness of that is being created with that taste, right? Because we have a very conscious community, and you're aware that when you have sweet foods, you're creating the dopamine in the brain. It's actually, the dopamine is being created even before the sweetness hits your brain. It's the pursuit of the flavor that's creating the dopamine. But the flavor we consume is impacting all of our nervous system, not just the taste buds in the brain, from our toes to our thumbs, for better or for worse. Okay, so our body is actually covered in taste receptors, inside and out. And when I say out, I mean our skin. Our skin is covered in taste receptors. Now, we don't typically think of them as taste receptors because it's not food that's going on our skin, and we don't notice, we don't pick up on that flavor as we would as if it was in our mouth, but it's the same receptors. There's many different receptors depending on the type of stimuli we're talking about, whether we're talking about sweetness or savoriness, but we do have those receptors on our skin and inside our body. So it's just a little example of how the taste and flavor that we're experiencing is not limited to our mind. Okay, this has a direct impact on our health. And like I said, flavor is actually a combination, generally thought of as a combination of the taste and olfactory, which is the smell, and then somatosensory, touch fibers. But my overview is actually much deeper than just that. It's all of your beliefs and values, and how hungry you are, how what your mood is like, what the social situation is like, what your security is like, if you're safe, or if you are you're more on a high alert. All of these things are going to be taken into consideration. And so that flavor that we're experiencing is impacting the body. Like I said, there's receptors all over the body. So when you take in food and it comes into your mouth, it goes down to your esophagus. It's triggering the receptors in your esophagus, in your throat, in your stomach, pancreas, digestive system. And then it gets into the digestive system and it's still having an impact inside your intestinal lining. And then it comes through the blood and it'll go to other organs, including the brain, but also your heart and the liver and the kidneys. All of these things are being affected by the taste and flavor that we're consuming. And the taste molecules, like sugar, it's the actual molecules that are stimulating that sweet taste, this sucrose, glucose, fructose. And so these are nutrients. And so we're talking about them from a nutrient standpoint, but I want to emphasize that these are also the flavor molecules. These are the taste molecules, and it's going to make a difference in the grand scheme of things when you see this, the entire presentation here, that we identify them as flavor and taste molecules as well as nutrition molecules. Okay. And so as they're traveling through the body, they play an important role. Glucose is giving our body energy, right? But it also has other impacts on the body with insulin and the impact on our metabolism. There's many different roles that glucose plays. It's not just providing energy. It has a very intertwined relationship with many other factors, processes in the body. The same is true for sodium. When sodium comes into the body, it's not just that salty taste, but it's actually an electrolyte, right? So it has a strong influence on the electrical system of our body, which is very impactful in the nervous system, plus other areas of the body. But within the nervous system alone, the sodium plays a major role in whether we're going to experience excitation or healthy levels. And it's really interesting, and it's not at all what I expected. I did. We'll talk about that more in a minute. So does that make sense? Any questions so far? This is, like I said, my first time doing this presentation, so I'm going to be developing it and making it much deeper. So I would love to answer any questions on this right now. That flavor is an important factor in determining our health and happiness. This is such a big topic that it's hard to go much deeper without confusing you. But I would love to answer questions. Okay.
Do you think the sight has something to do with how we perceive food, how it looks?
Yes.
Along with taste, smell, and touch.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The sight of the food is going to be the first thing letting us know what we're consuming. First of all, it'll give us an idea, because we have an association in our head. So we'll see something and we'll start telling the body whether it's protein, carbohydrates, or fat. But we're also going to be telling the body if it's looking good and it's kind of a safe thing to eat. If it's not as presentable, this isn't the case most of the time, but you might see something and it looks like that does not look good. I shouldn't eat that. And if maybe you're doing a challenge or, someone is kind of, you lost a bet or something, then you have to eat this thing that doesn't look good to you. Your body's going to have a reaction to it before you even put it in your mouth. You're going to be thinking that that's not going to be good. And so you're creating a psychosomatic experience before it even comes in. Psychosomatic being your mind is having an impact on your body without you even touching this food, right? Just by looking at it. And the same goes for your nose, your smelling of it, the food. It doesn't have to touch your body for the the flavor to start playing a role in affecting your immediate state. And depending on how much of an effect it's having, it could actually impact your health in the moment. And that could, not often, but very rarely, could lead to more serious conditions. And absolutely, bad food can impact your sensory neurons 100%. 100%. That's part of why I'm talking about this, but not even your sensory, not only your sensory neurons, way beyond your sensory neurons. We're going to talk about more of this in a second. My whole course, The Magic of Umami, is all about this. Yes. Okay, awesome, Jamie. Love to hear it. You're intuitively getting a sense for where we're going. Amazing. Okay. So let me just think before I move on to the next one. With my story, my journey, I went from a standard American diet to a vegetarian diet when I moved to Washington State from Michigan. I chose to be vegetarian just to get an idea of, not like to force myself to eat legumes. Really, legumes were like this super strange food to me: lentils, beans, peas. And I was like, I'm going to have to be vegetarian. So I learned how to prepare these things. After a year of doing that, I loved it and felt so good that I went to a raw vegan diet. Actually, I was experimenting with raw vegan for a little bit, learning, and then finally committed to it 100%. And so I did that for 4 months, and then I found True North Health Center and Dr. McDougall and added cooked food back in. But that transition was incredible. And the flavor was a major part of why I got healthy. It wasn't just a change in the nutrients, it was a change in the flavor. The flavor made a difference in how much inflammation I had. It made a difference in my blood sugar levels, made a difference in my mental cognition, right? And my enjoyment, my happiness levels. I was able to have more happiness without needing things like caffeine and alcohol, right? It was a healthier, stable, true happiness with these real foods. And it allowed me to start sensing my body again, because I wasn't in a total state of inflammation, always wanting to kind of escape the body, right? Always in my head and not paying attention to my body. It really freed me when I reduced the inflammation and tension in my body through the decrease in the richness of the savory and sweet foods that I was consuming. So what do I mean by this? Let's move on and what you'll discover. So this is the second secret that I learned on my journey. After getting really clean, living at True North Health Center, I was living in the apartment place next door, and I was there for 3 years and I loved it. I had an amazing community, the interns, the patients, the doctors. It was fantastic. When I left there, I slowly started adding foods back in, and it was in large part due to my the social scene. I was, dating and wasn't going to bars or anything like that, but I was sacrificing my own values to be accepted within a community, within, these new relationships. And so I slowly realized, it actually took a long time. It took hitting rock bottom and getting to a depressed state for me to realize how plant-based flavor is often sickening. Now, at the time, I might have thought that it was rare because I didn't have a lot of friends or acquaintances that were doing whole food plant-based and not doing well. But now today, this is, 5 years, 6 years later, and the way that we have our plant-based food system, our plant-based environment is drastically different than where it was when I started. In 2011, I think that's when Dr. Or Brian Wendell came out with Forks Over Knives. I went plant-based just before Forks Over Knives came out. When that came out, when we said plant-based, we meant whole food plant-based. I actually wrote an article at that time saying technically plant-based does not mean whole foods. And, you know, I made that distinction, and I was kind of hinting at this is going to kind of get taken out of control, because based means that the thing is just based on plants. But we have so many, you know, pharmaceuticals and supplements and all these things that are based on plants, but they're not actually wholesome or healthy at all. And so today our society is in a different state, like I said, and the plant-based flavor that is available is more often sickening than healthy. Now, if you're in our community here, you've been here for a while, or you've been doing it on your own for a while, you're likely eating whole food plant-based, right? And so you are not doing this more processed plant-based that I'm kind of speaking to, but that doesn't mean you aren't getting trapped by certain ingredients and being programmed, conditioned, even by the best intentioned, beautiful doctors and experts to think that some of the plant-based foods are healthy, super healthy. How many people here are love pasta? Anyone love pasta here? Bread? Okay, I think we can all say yes to that for the most part. Anyone eating pasta, bread, tortillas, any process, any flour products? Anyone? Write in the comments if you're eating any flour products. And I'm not telling you you shouldn't be having them, but that's a minimally processed food in the whole food plant-based world, where it's absolutely accepted among many, most whole food plant-based communities would say pasta is accepted. And it's not a whole food in the slightest. It's flour. It's been totally ground up to flour, right? But we've been conditioned and programmed by experts and doctors who are saying it's absolutely healthy, part of a healthy whole food diet. And for some people it may be, but we need to be addressing, I want to be addressing the physiology and speaking to this in a way where we're kind of being transparent with the flavor, because it's the flavor that can really persuade people to justify certain products. Just like doctors saying meat is okay. I think some of the doctors that are saying plant-based is the best way to go are saying the same with pasta, because it tastes so good and they don't want to take it. They may not want to give it up themselves. And they certainly don't want to enforce that upon other people when they're already saying to not have meat and cheese and all these other things, right? I felt the same way initially. I remember talking about, you know, having similar conversations like this with Chef AJ, and I was more on the side of helping people transition and the flour being more acceptable. Fantastic, Carol, grinding your own. Absolutely. That's the way our ancestors would have done it. I love it. Yes. And I need to reconnect with Susan Pierce Thompson, is a good friend of mine, and but I haven't spoken to her in a while. And I would love to reconnect because I've got some science to share with her, and I cannot wait to do that. So this is when I was at True North working with Dr. Clapper, my personal doctor who isn't there anymore. He's in Florida, but he's amazing. He moved on to be teaching medical students rather than seeing patients himself. But he would always say, when we're having a conversation about where we want to go to eat at night, what we're really saying is, what flavor of sugar, oil, and salt do you want tonight? Right? When you're saying, do you want to order Indian? Do you want to go to Indian? Do you want Mexican? Do you want Italian? All of that is talking about the flavor. And when we're talking about restaurants, specifically the processed flavor, the sugar, the oil, the salt. But this sos-free, as we called it at True North, is missing something. And AJ was right on, well, kind of in the right direction, as well as Susan, with eliminating the flour. Both of these communities, Chef AJ and Susan Pierce Thompson, both of their communities are fantastic. And they specifically work with addiction and weight loss. And it's amazing. They both eliminate flour. But why do they eliminate flour? It's in part because the way flour acts in the body, like sugar, like processed sugar, but it's more than that. And I don't know that either of them understand this. So I can't wait to, like I said, have these conversations with them about the science. But what we're going to talk about here is going to make a difference for you. Because like I said, they don't know, and they're experts. They may know, they may have, I've actually seen Susan talk about the umami we're going to talk about, but she wasn't fully informed of how much it's impacting her program in a very positive way. And this kind of similar with AJ, I don't know how much she knows. So with that being said, these three, sugar, salt, and oil, are three of the, very known common ingredients that we're drawn to. Our minds are drawn to, and they're having a very impactful effect on our body. And for that reason, most of our community knows to limit these or avoid them altogether. Right? When I say sugar, we're talking about refined processed sugar. Same with salt, table salt. For some people, they're avoiding all salt, even sea salt and Celtic Himalayan. For me, I'm not as strong as I was before about no salt. I can do a little bit of the like sea salt, real salt is what I like. And oil, the processed oil, we know that healthy fats are incredibly healthy and essential to the body. Okay, so the same is true with another taste that doesn't get the attention it deserves. So what taste is that? The bitter and sour, we're not really drawn to. From an evolutionary standpoint, our body has taste receptors for all of these, but it's actually the sweet and the umami that we really want, that we really crave.
So make sure that you're
and
staying
seek
weather
out.
aware. Have your first alert weather app
So we've
handy,
got
as we'll be sending out alerts and watches in the mornings
please mute
ahead of the
themselves.
active weather for
Someone
tomorrow.
could-
Now, temperatures
find my-
across the region right now, we do have rainfall 74 in
I was watching
Alexandria,
a
but
TV show. Could you
92
mute
in
yourself?
Germantown, 84 in Fairfax.
Can you hear me?
Mark, I was looking at those temps too.
Where's-
It is cooling where it is rain, still hot though where it is not.
I have to stop my
News
share
at
really
10 and
fast.
40 past the hour, brought to you by Penn Fed. Great rates for everyone. Here's Jeff. The office vacancy rate in the district is now a record 18.9%. But empty space is mostly in older buildings. Those built before.
Hey, David,
2000.
can you please mute yourself?
All right, you got it.
So if you're an owner of an older building, you're
Mute all. Okay, thank you. To make that easier when I'm on the other screen. Okay, so I was just going over how many people are familiar with umami. If you've taken my Magic of Umami course, I would consider you an expert. Depends if you've actually gone through all of it or not, but let me know in the chat how familiar you are with umami. Okay. Yes. Okay. Amazing, Donalda. Awesome, Rebecca. So I'm going to tell you more about it at the end of the class, but the Magic of Umami is what it's called. And I made the course because I wanted to teach, and started it because I wanted to teach how to make food really flavorful. And like, this was a big piece of it. And it became so much more about health and happiness in addition to the flavor. And so really powerful. Umami, like I said, is one taste that we're drawn to. In fact, we're drawn to it as an infant. The breast milk that we're receiving from mother is high in the sweet taste and umami. And when you give a baby something sweet, like just an infant, just a month old, if you give them something sweet, they really like it. But if you give them something with the umami, the savoriness, they like it even more than the sweetness. That's powerful. It's saying something. So what is this umami that I'm speaking of? Well, it's the fifth taste, right? So it was actually identified much later than the rest of those four tastes, which have been around for thousands of years. The umami taste was just identified in 1906, but it wasn't accepted as an actual taste until 2002. So it's fairly new to kind of the culinary world, and the public is seeing it now for the first time in this light of, we really want this taste in our food, right? So chefs are having a blast, creating more dishes with, all this umami. It's fantastic. The stimulus, meaning the little molecule that actually triggers the taste bud to give us the savory sensation, is called glutamate. Anyone familiar with glutamate? It's the highly processed form of glutamate is MSG. So immediately after the doctor who discovered glutamate realized the power of this savoriness, and that's what he was actually seeking, what was making the food so savory and delicious, when he identified glutamate, he created MSG. The glutamate was originally found in the seaweed of his family's traditional dashi soup. And so he isolated the glutamate and packaged it, commercialized it to make it into MSG. But it is a natural amino acid, actually. It's a building block for protein. So amino acids are the tiny little units that make up protein. Right on the left here, you can see a whole string of protein, the amino acids all linked together to make this protein. On the right, when they're separated through a process, might be a natural process, or it might be a commercialized process, manufactured process, to separate all these proteins, then they're free amino acids, okay? So this is where glutamate falls into the picture. It's an amino acid making up protein in whole foods. But when it's in the whole protein form, the taste buds can't pick up on it because it's strung up with all these protein, all these other amino acids, and it's a protein. The taste buds don't have access to it. So you need to break down the protein into the free glutamate, the free amino acids, and that's when you develop the taste. So that's what happens when we cook our food. We're breaking down the protein. And when we're chewing our food, we're breaking down the protein so that we can taste it. And not just with the protein, but also with the carbohydrates and the fats. We're breaking down the molecules so that our taste buds can actually pick up on the taste. Does this make sense? Yes, umami is in mushrooms. It's mushrooms are a rich source of umami. So is the seaweed. So are tomatoes, but there are many other sources. You want to know the number one source? Hi, Diane. Great to see you here. So before I tell you that source, what do you think is going to be the trouble with this protein issue? If the protein, any guesses where I'm going with this? No one in the umami course say anything. But if you're not in the magic of umami course, any ideas about where I'm going with this? If we have processed sugar that's damaging to the body, healthy when it's in whole fruits, even when it's in sweet potatoes, but very damaging when it's in as a white sugar, When we have fat in nuts and seeds, coconut, fantastic. When we have fats in extracted oils, or even the lard or the margarine, incredibly damaging to the body, right? And so very different. What about protein? And any guesses to how protein works, to what the negative effects of processed protein would be? Any guesses? You can just throw them out there. If you're wrong, no matter. It doesn't matter. So the way it's working on the body, be interesting to see. No, thank you, Carol. So no guesses just yet, but I'm going to let you continue. This is one of the biggest issues, is the processed food industry. Our world is promoting a plant-based, our society as a whole, not everyone, but in large part, our media and the industry, I would say the healthcare industry and the food industry are on the same page with promoting a plant-based diet. They're not promoting legumes though. They're not promoting lentils, beans, and peas. They're just saying plant-based, right? A plant-based diet. You don't see them emphasizing whole food plant-based. You see plant-based. And you definitely see plant-based meats and plant-based cheeses, plant-based milks, right? In the fast food joints, in Starbucks. Well, these plant-based meats are savory, right? What they do to create plant-based meats and plant-based dairy is create a whole lot of savoriness in one product. In order to get the savoriness, they have to bring together protein molecule, the savory amino acids, which would be glutamate and aspartate for the most part, 99%. These savory molecules. The other amino acids will play a small part in the flavor, and that's going to decipher whether it tastes like chicken or shrimp or fish, right? Those other amino acids play a role, but by and large, it's the glutamate and aspartate that is making it taste savory, like meat and like cheese. And so these products, that if you see a plant-based meat or plant-based dairy product that is not, purely whole food, then it's going to be high in the processed protein. Okay. And so excessive free glutamate, someone could mute themselves again. Someone got unmuted. Just double check your microphone. Excessive free glutamate is one of the earliest and most crucial steps to a destructive cascade of events leading to the decline in the cognitive function, as well as inflammation, dysfunction, and pain throughout the body. Like I said, it's not just the nervous system that's being affected, but it's actually the entire body that's going to be affected by having an excess of free glutamate, which is going to happen if we have an excess of processed protein. Okay, so the difference though, like I showed you with this whole protein versus the free proteins, the free amino acids, I should say, is one is accessible to the taste buds and to the taste receptors, and one is not. Okay, so the one that is not accessible is called glutamic acid. This is what we call it when it's bound up in a whole protein. So when I say glutamic acid, I think of the glutamate in a whole food. The mushrooms, the tomatoes, but also the sweet potatoes and spinach and squash and legumes, all of the legumes, all of the grains, they have a savoriness to them, and that is glutamic acid. Okay, it's when it gets freed up, that's when our neurons can sense it. When it's free from the bound protein, then it's called glutamate, and that's where it is a part of the nervous system. It becomes part of the nervous system as a neurotransmitter. You guys know what a neurotransmitter is? When a molecule, a little messenger, sends a signal from one neuron to the next neuron, that's a neurotransmitter. Now we have excitatory neurotransmitters, where they excite the next neuron. And we have inhibitory neurotransmitters, where they slow down the message. So glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter. Any ideas what this means? You can tell me in the comments what this means. If glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter, it's stimulating the next neuron, right? So our body is, it relies on this. Like this is an essential process that has to happen, which is why we make 50 grams, not milligrams, 50 grams of glutamate a day. And the body is relying on this glutamate to receive the activity in the body. Like from one little tiny neuron to the next neuron, it's the glutamate that's sending the message. However, there's a balance that's happening between the excitatory glutamate and the inhibitory GABA molecules. And the other neurotransmitters also play a role, but glutamate and GABA being the inhibitory, that is the kind of the partner with glutamate. GABA helps to inhibit the glutamate activity. And so these two are like the gas and the brake for the body. Does anyone experience anxiety ever? There's someone unmuted. I don't know who it is, and you're pretty quiet, so it's not an issue, but just in case, if you could mute yourself, that'd be great. The anxiety is one of the first signals that you've got too much glutamate happening. Now, I felt anxiety before getting on this call. You could also call it excitement. It's just a little extra, that nervousness, the extra energy in the neurons, because something's going to happen, like I need to be ready, right? So that my body creates a little extra glutamate. So it's normal for the body to be able to produce that feeling, whether you call it anxiety or excitement. But when we have a lot of it, when it's happening more often, and maybe even in a way that's preventing us from fully functioning to the state that we want to be in society, that becomes really detrimental, right? And that what's happening is you have an excess of glutamate in the body. I know I can mute everyone. It's just sometimes hard. There we go. The last time I couldn't find the Zoom link to do that. So there we go. Okay, so the balance is really important. And like I said, the GABA plays an important role in that. I also want to mention, because it's really exciting, I just learned this recently, and I mentioned it earlier, that the sodium plays an important role in the balance as well. Now, we would think that sodium is, harmful to the body when we get, when we have a lot of it. Of course, it can be too much, but it actually plays an important role to make sure that we don't get too much stimulation from the glutamate. What happens is the glutamate is released from one neuron into the synaptic cleft, or the synapse between two neurons, and then it stimulates the next neuron. After it stimulates the next neuron, it needs to be taken back up by either the first neuron or the astrocyte, which is another neural cell. Those astrocytes take up the glutamate so that there's not an excess in the synapse. Because if there was extra glutamate in the synapse, then it would keep triggering the next neuron, and you would have too much activity, and it can get out of control really fast. So it's really important that the astrocyte picks up the glutamate and takes it back in, and then there's a recycling process that happens. In order for the glutamate to be taken up by the astrocytes, the sodium needs to be there. The sodium is a signal for, or is a kind of a cofactor for the receptor to work to pick up the glutamate. That makes sense? So the sodium is an important piece And just as an example, another example of how our body is designed so brilliantly, and we need all of these different molecules, but they need to be in the right proportions and in the right locations. And our body knows best what to do with everything that's coming in when we give it whole foods, right? When we give it processed foods, then the body doesn't really know how to handle those, right? It does the best and it does an amazing job handling the processed food. But if we continue with large amounts, the body just gets overwhelmed and it starts giving us symptoms to change, to do something differently. So just as an example, if you have an imbalance of too much glutamate in the body or too little glutamate in the body, here's some examples of disease that happens, right? And remember, this is savoriness, right? Tying it to the flavor again, savoriness. When we have too much savoriness, too much richness and free processed glutamate, then we can get these symptoms like autism, ALS, Parkinson's, schizophrenia, migraines, restless leg syndrome, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, seizures, strokes, insomnia, hyperactivity, OCD, anxiety, the stiff person syndrome. All these different things are because there's too much activity between the neurons. So when I said it stimulates the next neuron, that means hyperactivity, right? So it makes sense with like anxiety, that's really clear. With twitching of the leg or a muscle spasm, it's clear because it's like there's too much signal being sent from one neuron to the next neuron. Or with a muscle spasm, a whole bunch of neurons are being overstimulated to the muscle and it's causing a spasm. But what about like bipolar disorder or Alzheimer's? How is that being affected? Well, when there's too much of the activity for a long period of time, like chronic excitoactivity, it's actually exciting the cell to death. There's so much excitement, the cell dies. By the way, calcium plays a very important role in this process. It's the calcium coming into the neuron, and there's too much, and that creates the neurodegeneration and eventually cell death. If you join me for the Magic of Umami, we go deep into all of this. But when we have too much in the body from the savory foods, generally the processed savory foods, the whole foods aren't going to be much of an issue, by and large for most people. But there are some exceptions, absolute exceptions to that are really important to know, which is why I care so much about sharing this with you. The chronic stimulation of the nervous system in our society is happening with the food, but also with the chemicals like glyphosate. PFAs, I just learned PFAs are the forever chemicals. They're in your contacts. They're in these cups that from Starbucks are just 2 exposures that I've had, a lot of exposure to. And so I have a lot of PFAs in my system, no doubt. And that's really contributing to my ongoing symptoms that I'm handling and working to detox. I mentioned this because I'm saying there's other things contributing to glutamate in the body rather than just the food or an excess of glutamate. If you get an injury or if you have an infection, your body creates an inflammatory response. That inflammation is tied to glutamate. When there's inflammation, it's going to create glutamate. When there's excess glutamate, it's going to create inflammation. Okay? They're linked together. If there's glutamate and it's just signaling the next molecule, and then it gets taken back up and recycled, that's not going to trigger inflammation. It's when there's an excess of glutamate. If the glutamate is hanging out in that synapse, or there's so much it starts to spread to other neurons, that's when the inflammation process starts. Okay. And whenever there's inflammation, there's going to be excess glutamate. Okay. It's part of the process of stimulating cytokines and getting the inflammation going to help heal the body. So there is very much a link between those things. And I'm now going to share with the too little. Oh, this is actually not what it, so on the right-hand side, we have low levels of GABA, which is also speaking to high levels of glutamate, but it's just kind of a different angle. And the bigger issue is too low levels of GABA. So there's more glutamate than needed because there's too low of GABA. It's a nuanced thing, but adrenal fatigue, insomnia, chronic fatigue, panic attacks, alcoholism, drug addiction, cravings for sugar, nervousness, tension, muscle spasms, so there's some overlap, but you can see there's a whole lot of disease when we have a disruption to the glutamate and GABA process. And this is by and large created by an excess of glutamate in our diets. Like I said, it's not the only thing, and also other aspects of our diet, an excess of sugar, an excess of glucose can contribute to these symptoms as well. So it's not like glutamate is the only culprit, but we've got a lot of people in our health communities speaking about salts and sugar and the oil. No one's really talking about glutamate. It's talked about within the autism community a little bit, and maybe the ADHD, maybe addiction, but by and large, people aren't giving it the attention they need. Any comments here? We're going to go on to secret number 3 in just a moment. So let me know if you have any questions, anything that needs to clarify. So again, the excessive flavor that is captivating our attention and our energy, it's destroying our health and happiness. So we've got to get the flavor right. We become absent or numb to life's greatest pleasures, and we're yearning and searching for more deliciousness, but in all the wrong places. This was what I learned when I hit that low with feeling depressed and I was overworked, adrenal fatigue, and just not in a good place. And I was eating whole food, plant-based at my home 100%, but I was going out to eat and having foods that were not whole food, plant-based, gluten, just processed food, not really processed, not like junk food, but restaurant food, right? Which absolutely has more oil and salt and the MSG, and not even just the MSG, but there's all these other names for MSG, 50, at least 50, probably closer to 70, 75 different names that the free glutamate will fall into in our food system. So I was always wanting more deliciousness in my food and my recipes. I knew people didn't need more dates or more nuts, especially some people in our community. They were doing fantastic with keeping things as clean as Dr. Goldhammer would recommend, or Chef AJ. But I wanted my recipes to be really delicious. And that was in large part because I knew it would be more enticing to other people, but also because that's what my taste buds, or more than my taste buds though, that's what my mind wanted. Right? More deliciousness. And I was just looking in the wrong places. I was looking in my food, wanting more deliciousness in my food. And what I realized is I was, like I said, in the wrong places. Oh, I don't hear Diana, Susan. Diana, though, if you saw the message or you're unmuted, could you please mute yourself? That would be great. Thank you. Great question, Debbie. We'll talk a little bit about that near the end. We're getting close, but we need to be optimizing flavor, and that will lead to quicker healing and greater vitality. So this is what the third secret I realized is that flavor needs to be optimized, and not in the way that I was trying to do it initially. I was trying to get more flavor. I was trying to replicate the hyper concentrated flavor in our society, whether it was through animal products or or just the hyper concentrated foods at restaurants and all the different places that we're exposed to, the standard American diet, basically, I would actually taste some of those foods just to give myself an idea of how much taste I wanted to create in the dish that I was creating, right? Like if I made a ketchup, I would taste the store-bought ketchup and then I would make my ketchup, things like that. So I was trying to replicate flavor to an extent, to a level that people were used to with the standard American diet. And not necessarily as extreme, but you get the idea. And what I realized more so is that we need to optimize flavor for our well-being. And that includes getting like bitter foods. Bitter foods are great for detoxing. We need to incorporate more fermented foods, the sour and tangy foods. Those are really great for digestion and for nourishing the microbiome. We want sweetness, but we need to balance the and kind of dial back, at least for me, dial back the amount of sweetness that I'm getting, was getting, and I've been doing that, right? Even from, you know, healthy sources like dates and things. The desserts I was having, though, it was all so rich. And over time, you know, it's been a while since I've stopped making baked goods because I have that kind of addict tendency and would overdo it. And so I just don't do baked goods, but I do love things like lattes and smoothies, and I would want more sweetness there. Same with when I'm making dressings and sauces. So recognizing the flavor can be optimized in a way that leads to greater healing and vitality, quicker healing, more effective healing, and not just healing a disease, but actually repairing our DNA, lengthening our telomeres, which are the strands at the end of the DNA that it protects the DNA from dying. And so we can increase our longevity by getting the flavor right. Okay, does that make sense? This is a little picture that it requires balancing, specifically talking here about glutamate and GABA. We're balancing the stimulation with the inhibition, or the calming relaxation. We need to put the brakes on sometimes, but we also need to press on the gas, right? And this is like the stress in our lives. We have so much unnecessary stress that we're not handling the best. Often we're not handling the best. And so we need to put on the brakes and give ourselves a lot of relaxation, the time to rest, especially at night when our bodies are given, you know, given this time, this period by society. We all agreed that we're going to rest at night. And yet often we're not getting a good rest, a really deep, restful sleep where it is repairing and allowing our bodies to recuperate. And on the other side, the stress and intensity, the gas that we're feeling is not the healthiest, right? It's often more a lower energy state where it's more a lower vibration, right? Less happiness, more stress from work, from bills, from fighting, relationships, tension, where the stress that we really want to be having, our body wants, is the challenges like hiking and running, doing these workouts, the hormesis effect, where we're stressing the body in a good way and it actually becomes stronger and more resilient because of it. Projects at work and things like that can definitely be helpful. Even stressful relationships can be helpful if you are talking it through and communicating and doing so with some resolve. And there's a good ending, but we definitely need to work on finding this balance, the harmony. So how do we maintain a beautiful harmony in body and mind? Well, what I realized, like I said, I was focused on the wrong flavor in the wrong place. I was looking through to my food for more deliciousness. And what I discovered is that when I created more deliciousness in my life, I didn't need it in my food so much. This is the was the birth of my membership program, Delicious Living, which is actually going to become, it may become the business name, my whole business name, instead of just the culinary gym, because it's more encompassing of the work I want to be doing and helping people to live and shine. And so we need to find that harmony. And there's many ways to go about doing that, and anything that's going to relax the body, just to give you a general idea. Whoever was it, Diane, that asked about the GABA, or Debbie? Anything that relaxes the body is going to increase GABA. So yoga, qigong, meditation, a bath, reading a book, a peaceful conversation. These are all going to calm the body down and create more GABA. But specifically with the foods, since this is my oldest expertise, is we want to choose foods that are less inflammatory, really low in inflammation, or low in that effect. So reducing or eliminating meat and cheese, avoiding gluten and highly processed soy. I also want to add in here highly processed corn. So corn, gluten, and soy are actually the biggest sources of protein in our society, of processed protein in our society. Has anyone in the Magic of Umami class that checked out the article I shared recently? I discovered this article that was just released from the CIA in 2003, and that is not, I'm not referring to the Culinary Institute of Arts. It's actually the CIA, the government, and they just released this article that was actually the documentation proceedings from an event in 1948 called the Glutamate Symposium. The Glutamate Symposium in 1948 was all about how to create more acceptability, adaptability, and acceptability of glutamate in our society. And in that article, they confirmed and validated what I had been teaching in the Magic of Umami course, that although the the most talked about sources of umami are mushrooms, tomatoes, seaweed, and things like that, the actual biggest sources in our society are wheat, soy, and corn, when they're processed, and that protein is processed so that it's available to the taste buds and to our system, our body. Really, really interesting. So I've got some slides here that I didn't need to include, so I'm going to skip through them. We're going to just go through these really fast. So then buying fresh whole foods. More specifically, we want low anti-inflammatory diet, but specifically at the top here, I said whole protein, whole starch, whole sugar, whole fat, because sometimes we talk about whole grains, we talk about whole fats, but then we say meat and legumes and we don't emphasize whole protein. So I thought it was kind of funny. I just wanted to say whole protein. Same with the sugar, whole sugar, not fruit juice and jam. We want the whole fruits. So then we have the vegetables, beans, lentils, peas, whole grains, whole gluten-free grains. Fresh and frozen fruit are both great. Nuts and seeds, herbs and spices. Thanks, Sunshine and Jamie. Yeah, and it's not about being perfect at all. That's another aha that I had, is I don't need the food to be as perfect when I'm creating more deliciousness in my life, and the things that create GABA, like the yoga and meditation and all these other things, can help me have more balance without needing to be perfect at any one thing, right? I don't think that's very helpful to the mind to be seeking perfection. Tofu and tempeh are processed, but minimally processed. And so they're on this list. If you want access to this cheat sheet, you can email me and I'm going to add you, or let me know in the comments too, if you want, just give me your email address in the comments and I can reach out to you that way. I'll add you to my email list and send you this cheat sheet of all the sources of free glutamate. There's over 50 on this list. The biggest ones, though, you can just screenshot if you want the biggest. Well, these are the most clear: glutamate, glutamic acid, the MSG, aspartame, and you don't want glutamine as an added ingredient. I wouldn't want glutamine in the food, but glutamine is a very healthy nutrient that we do want in our food, just as a whole food source, not an added ingredient. Yes, add your email address. I'm going to add you to my email list so that you can get more updates from me as well. Anyone at True North Health Center who's in the dining room and wants this cheat sheet and or wants to join my email list, you can email me support@theculinarygym.com, support@theculinarygym.com, and I will add you and get you access to this cheat sheet. Okay, I don't know, what's my timing here? So any questions? I have some myth busting slides I could go through, but I know it's been a long time. I can't see the exact time on my screen right now. But I want to answer any questions and I don't want to keep you too long. So let me know if you have any questions. The 3 secrets. Awesome. Yes, I will repeat those. Thank you, Judy. Okay, yes. So I am pretty much out of time. I'm going to wrap up the questions. I don't have them all written out, so let's go through these really fast. The secrets. Number 1, the flavor we enjoy is directly linked to our well-being. The type of flavor that you're enjoying is directly influencing your health on a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level. When I say spiritual, I mean your energy, and that is directly connected to whatever higher power you believe in. That's my understanding. And so your whole being is affected by the flavor that you're consuming. And I honestly there's science that I would love to share, and I will be sharing with people who join the Magic of Umami, connecting glutamate and our consciousness. Glutamate increases as we wake up in the morning with the sun, and it decreases as we go to bed at night. But beyond that circadian rhythm cycle that glutamate is in, it actually also has another link to our consciousness. So really, really interesting topic. Please, I'm going to put in the comments here, anyone that wants to join me deeper, go deeper with me in the Magic of Umami. But the link for those who are not in the chat and maybe just in the audience at True North Health Center, if you want to join the Magic of Umami class, I would love to have you. It's an amazing course. I just expanded it, so we have 8 different modules plus 3 cooking classes and a Q&A you can join right now. It's theculinarygym.com/umami. That was the first secret. Second secret is that plant-based flavor is often sickening. And sickening, I mean literally inflammatory, creating disease. Alzheimer's starts in your 20s. Well, I think at World War II, they had studied soldiers that died and they had Alzheimer's already developing because their neurons were dying off at 20 years old. This is an ongoing, very gradual disease. And so people are already experiencing it right now. And what's contributing is the dying off and the degeneration of the neurons due to many things, but in large part, the excess glutamate contributing to that inflammation. So plant-based flavor is sickening. The whole plant foods are health promoting, life supportive, not sickening at all. Then when we get into the nuances like tempeh and tofu, it's going to depend on the person. That's where you really got to take, if you want to understand this more, join me for the magic of umami. And we go much, much further into this because there are a lot of nuances and I just can't share it all here. Oh, I missed 3. Sorry. Optimizing flavor leads to quicker healing and greater vitality, again, in so many ways. I'm even, the flavor of the certain fruits like strawberries, lemons, limes, some of these more acidic, not as sweet fruits, they actually are very health promoting in the body. And so there's a lot of ways to optimize flavor rather than just making it richer. And I'm going to be teaching a class called Garden Fresh Healing, where we're going to go deeper into this. But in order to really get the most out of that class, Garden Fresh Healing, you're going to need to know the magic of umami content. So if you are enjoying any of this, all of this, definitely join me for that. If you stick to a nutrient-dense, low-calorie plan, you don't have to consider flavor. I think this is a myth. I put this as a myth because you can do low calories, nutrient dense, and still be having these processed foods that are too excitatory to the body. Just for instance, you could do Asian food, rice and vegetables with soy sauce and have way too much umami for your body. It depends on the individual. And there's genetics that go into this. There's a lot that goes into it. And we, like I said, go over this in the course. If I have a sweet tooth, not a savory tooth, am I good just eliminating sugar? No. Because you may not have a savory tooth, but by our very nature, we want savoriness. And so we don't think about the craving that we have for savoriness because it's just part of our day-to-day consumption. And often that is through the more processed foods, even legume pasta, for some people that could be an issue. I didn't mention it yet. Plant protein powders, protein bars, all of those things are incredibly processed. That protein is not ground up hemp seeds. It's hemp seeds ground up with the protein extracted from it. So it no longer has any of the fiber, the water, the carbohydrates, the nutrients, the fat, only protein. Same with pea protein. Pea protein, it doesn't even need to say powder, but if it says pea protein, that is no longer a whole food. Hemp protein, rice protein, those are not whole foods. Those are extracted protein, concentrated protein sources. Does that make sense? And so that's a really big one. Plant proteins are not talked about, but so one way that people are getting free glutamate and they don't realize it. It's like this, another myth. If I don't eat highly processed foods, I don't think this info applies to me. I realize this says apples, but same thing. It does apply to you because it's not just in those highly processed foods. It's in some of the foods that we see as healthy. Even soy milk, a processed soy milk, especially the way that they homogenize it, or all of the packaging, the way that they package it to sit on the shelves for a very long time, means that there's been a lot of processing to that. So it's best to make our milks from scratch. Yeah, and again, join me for the course because everyone's not affected in the same way, but absolutely soy milk is a source of free glutamate, but whether it matters to you is going to depend on many things. If for some reason you don't want to take the course and you want to work with me directly, or if you want to do both, you can do that too. I can do one-on-one coaching if anyone is noticing. Yeah, let me see. I have a couple hands raised. If I don't have a name for you, it just says iPhone. If you want to ask your question, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Yes, yes, my name is Deborah. I just
Deborah.
recently started writing up my own garbanzo beans for flowers. So is flowers contributing to that also? All type of flowers? I remember I'm listening to Susan Thompson talk. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Amazing that you're doing that. I wonder if you have, you're doing it in the blender or if you have like a grain mill or something that's breaking it down.
Yeah, I have a grain mill.
Yeah, awesome. So my thought is that it is a source of free glutamate, but whether that's an issue for you is going to depend on many things. Overall, like what's your, you don't have to answer, we don't have time to go deeper with you, but what is your, how's your health? Do you have any symptoms like anxiety, memory loss, insomnia, restlessness, cramping, muscle tension, and inflammation, anything like that, or an actual chronic disease diagnosis? That would make me, I would encourage, if I was working with someone one-on-one, I would encourage them to consider then doing a lower glutamate plan through the healing process. However, the bread and the grains and legumes, the way that they were initially made by society, I don't think they were detrimental, to the way that you're making it, the way our ancestors originally were making flours. They weren't having major issues. It's everything else in our society. So I think you can find balance in your life with healthy activities that will create more of the GABA to balance the glutamate. So hopefully that makes sense. And same with the rest of your diet, so that and it sounds like it would be if you're making your own flour, that the rest of your diet would be healthy and supportive for you to be able to have that. So the only other thing is if you were to have a gene mutation, I actually have a variation in my gene that makes me more susceptible to an excess of glutamate, which is why I have so much experience with these symptoms and everything. Yes. So the last, a couple things you might see if you look this up really quickly. If you were to do a search on MSG and someone wants to like go deeper or isn't convinced by my, what I've presented or something, someone's trying to argue with you about it, your partner or something. If you look it up, they're going to say MSG and glutamic acid aren't different in the body. The body can't differentiate between them. But that is not true. Glutamic acid, when it comes into the body, glutamic acid is bound. It's an amino acid bound to a whole protein, or at least to some other amino acids, so that it's still glutamic acid. And the body has to digest it. It has to break apart those bonds in order for it to be consumed or to be passed through the gut lining. If it comes in as MSG or any other source of free glutamate, then it can go through the gut lining without being pre-digested. Or the break it up of it is already digesting, right? When you're making flour, you're digesting that protein so that it's more available to the taste buds and the body can absorb it faster. Also, in relation to this, another thing that you'll see is that most dietary glutamate is consumed as fuel by the intestinal lining. So you don't need to worry about it, but actually glutamate, if you have an excess of it, it doesn't matter how much, the excess is still going to get past the gut lining because there is an excess of it. The gut lining only needs so much fuel, but also you're highly damaging the gut lining by having an excess because the gut lining doesn't want glutamate as fuel. It will use it, but it actually wants glutamine. So we want to be taking in more glutamine, and I don't recommend a supplementation as much as I recommend whole food sources of glutamine. The last one we'll talk about, the blood-brain barrier protects the brain from excess glutamate, but that is not true either. If you have a leaky gut, you're likely to have a leaky brain, and so it can get through that way. But also there's a big part of the brain, really, really important, that is not covered by the blood-brain barrier. And it absolutely, the excess glutamate gets into those smaller organs of the brain, and it has a major impact on our hypothalamus and pituitary gland, all the endocrine system. So things like obesity, the thyroid, like Hashimoto's, all these endocrine issues, fertility, all of these are being affected by excess glutamate. Again, we go deep into this in the Magic of Umami course. So number 8, I've already went over with you. Overall, the point today was that your health and happiness depend on you getting the flavor right. So I want you to enjoy the deliciousness in your food, but also the deliciousness in life. And when you get so much deliciousness through your living, your relationships, your activities, your joy, your work, passion, service, then the food doesn't matter so much, and you'll be more willing to be more objective about the flavor in your food. What's actually going to serve you rather than what's going to give you the biggest high, right? So if you want to join me in finding out how do you make the whole food plant-based meals healthy and delicious, that's where the Magic of Umami comes in. It's the science and the art of flavor that heals. And so I would love for you to join me. Again, that's theculinarygym.com/umami. And there is a special happening today, this weekend. There is a discount. Oh, actually, that's my plant-based cooking 101 course. There's a discount, but if you join the Magic of Umami, I'm going to give a bonus class called the Flavor Success Formula. If you join this weekend, today or tomorrow, the Flavor Success Formula, which is going to be really powerful to make sure that you can develop good flavor in your, not just your, well, not just, we work through many different things, not just the food. There's other pieces to it. And I'm not talking about lifestyle, deliciousness in your life. I'm speaking deliciousness to the food on your plate. There are many other factors aside from just the food on your plate that is going to affect the deliciousness of the food on your plate and your experience of food. Hopefully that makes some sense, but really awesome class. So I'm excited to do that with you if you want to join us for the Magic of Umami.
Katie?
Yep.
Okay, so in the email, they had a class, and this is how I found you actually. And then it had a class for you to sign over the weekend. Is that the Umami class that they're talking about? I'm not so sure. I'm sort of confused how to sign up for this one because the other one was for $99.
Oh yeah, they're actually the same, but this one is always, it's right now it's $99 until I, develop it more. It's probably go up later on, but the plant-based cooking 101 is discounted to $99. So they're actually both $99 right now. And I didn't want to confuse people by talking about the plant-based cooking 101 class today. But that's awesome you joined it. So if you want to do both with us, the culinarygym.com/umami is the Magic of Umami class. You can sign up there. For anyone that is hearing about the plant-based cooking 101 and wants to join, that is the culinarygym.com /PC 101 anytime, I think that is, but both of these are linked on the site. If you just go to the culinarygym.com homepage, you'll find both of them. And I would love to support you in the kitchen and really creating the deliciousness that is going to help heal you on every level. Because ultimately for me, like I said at the beginning, it's about you shining your light. I don't care about your blood work as much as I care about you feeling and being radiant. The bonus class is not already in the Magic of Umami, but I'm gonna give it to you as well because it's only gonna serve you. So if you're already in the Magic of Umami, don't worry about it. If you're in this round, I should say, of the Magic of Umami, if you've taken the Magic of Umami years ago but didn't sign up for the expanded version, email me and we'll talk about it. Okay. Jamie, if you want to do a personal consult, just email me support@theculinarygym.com. I love working with people one-on-one. We can really go deeper. Same goes for anyone else that's interested. Debbie, do you have a question? No, did we already answer it? Sunshine, it depends on where you are in your journey. Plant-based cooking 101 is all about the culinary aspect and doing this, all the different techniques and ingredients, a lot of recipes and the core meals I teach. it's a lot of fun. You learn about creating flavor with the salads, salad dressings and sauces, all that stuff. And the magic of umami is to help you really understand the science of flavor and then how to create more flavor in your food. So it could go either way. For someone that's having some processed food still and is also having symptoms, you might want to do the magic of umami because it'd be helpful to learn and understand the science to motivate you to create a cleaner diet, to move in that direction. I think seeing the science is really helpful. And also understanding that maybe doing some other lifestyle things may be a great additional solution, and that you wouldn't have to perfect the food necessarily, which is what I was always trying to do. Give my food more perfect. I got to be cleaner. I got to be, I'm not doing it well enough. And then that created shame and guilt and a whole bunch of other feelings. And it prevented me from doing other things that my body really did want, more meditation and things like that. So yeah, I will send a link to the replay of this session, as long as I think it's all being recorded. So I'll send that out. If you're not on my email list and you're at True North, the culinarygym.com, on that homepage, there's a link to get my free dressings e-cookbook, 12 delicious oil-free, salt-free salad dressings, sugar-free, SOS-free. And that will put you on the email list if you want to stay in contact and learn more, get more recipes and things like that. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us. If you left your email address here, I will add it to the list myself. But if not, definitely, I would love to stay in touch. Please go to the homepage and get on yourself. Have an amazing stay at True North. Anyone that is there, I wish you the best on your journey, and really cherish those taste buds and the flavor of the whole natural foods, and keep your taste buds, your palates very sensitive as long as possible, and really, just let your body heal as it wants to. So thank you so much, everyone. I will hopefully see you again sometime. Bye.